So yes, you are the happy manager of that construction building behind me. And the question now is, how do we do cost management? How we do this within a project? You might be involved into doing it, you might be learning it, but costs is money and money is nearing you management. So we are going to define what is cost management. We are also going to look at the differences between estimating costs and budget. We are going to explain account control or control accounts. They are accounts where you will control the spending of the project. And we will define the different processes that are involved into cost management. We will control it using the earned value method, and you will be able to identify the different terminology that we are going to use and that is used into project management regarding costs. I'm Christian from Vision 6D, and that's right now. Here I have a representation of the 49 processes defined within the PMBOK. And they are organized by groups of processes. You recognize at the top the initiation, and here below you see that we have planning. And within the group of planning, we have a few processes that are interesting for costs. First one is plan cost management. The second one is estimate costs. And the third one is determine the budget. So we define how we plan the cost, how we estimate, and how we define the budget. What is then left is, if we go below, it's down here into the control group of processes. You see that there is here control costs. So in all, we have 4 processes to handle within the PMBOK. What I was showing you here is a file that I created under MS Project, and that file, of course, you can download it on our website. Project cost management involves processes for estimating the budget, controlling, and then you make sure that you manage to complete the project within the approved budget. In some projects, it's absolutely possible that the cost management is not performed by the project manager. This is left to a functional manager or a department manager. This occurred to me several times. Cost management is anyway something important to understand, because who knows the next project on which you will move on. And also another thing, this is an important part to move ahead your career as a project manager. Activities in the cost domain area consist in estimating resources, that they are human resources, and we must know that human resources, the human factor, is usually one part of the cost that is the highest. There can be material and there can be also financial resources. With the control part, what we will do is to make sure that the project stays within the budget. When we are talking about budget, we must also talk about the scope that defines in the end what has to be done within the project. As soon as you can have a really precise scope, you will be able to have precise estimations and a precise budget. So, among the different processes, we see that there is the cost management plan. So, what is that cost management plan and what does it contain? The cost management plan contains details about the costs of the project and how you are going to handle them. For example, it could be currency. How do you manage them? How do you control those costs? And do you perform a baseline? How do you perform the baseline? How do you compare to the baseline? How often do you compare to the baseline? And then also, of course, there will be variances. How are you going to report? How are you going to manage those variances? So these are the elements which are defined within the cost management plan. One point that should also figure into the cost management plan is how you go about rounding values. From which level do you have to inform? Are thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s the amounts that should figure in your budget, for example? The cost management plan is part of the project management plan. It's in fact a sub-part of that bigger plan. For estimating, we are going to use the same method as we use to estimate time into the project. In order for you to be able to understand estimates, I have two videos that are already here. One is about estimation steps. It's how you have to proceed to do the estimation process. It's based for the time, but it's also the same processes that you will follow in order to do it for the costs. And a second one is really entering more into which are the methods which are available to you to do estimations. The methods used are exactly the same, that you either estimate time or you estimate the costs. In a large project that what we have here behind me, costs are managed at a higher level. This is what we called control accounts. It means that we don't want to know the details of all the costs of all the tasks, but we want this at a higher level. If I want to represent this on a WBS, you see the decomposition of the different parts that you have. For example, renovation of a house. And then what you will do is that you won't enter the details. You could have here, for our building, for example, you want to know all the elements that are part of the plumbing, for example. How much do they cost? You don't want to enter into the details. How much are the costs for the electricity in general? You don't want to know the details, but you want to follow the costs at that high level to make sure, of course, that you are still into the budget and that you don't need to intervene because something bad is happening in the project right now. In a project, you will see different kinds of costs. First of all, you have what we call fixed costs. For example, you use a building. This is typically a fixed cost. You also have salaries, you can have rental, and so on. On the other hand, you have what we call variable costs. For example, work is a variable cost. You use more or less work, more or less labor from somebody, from a company. You have also variable costs, for example, consultants. Are you using them a lot? More next month, less next month? They are variable costs. They are adapted to the usage during the time. Beside that, we have also a categorization which we call direct costs. Direct costs are those regarding the project. Are my costs directly involved into the project? For example, my consultants, they are working for me into the project and just into this project, so all their charges are direct costs to my project. Indirect costs to a project could be, for example, when I hired some people to work into my project, I use the HR department to search for those people, to go through all the selection process, So their cost, the cost of that HR department, because they did something for my project. So how is that cost due into the project? So this is what we call indirect costs. Among the indirect costs, we have also what we call the management fees. For example, in your project, you have managers from different departments that are involved. So how do you account for their time into the project? So this could be indirect cost that you would have as management fee for maybe 10% value of the budget that you have in your project. This is one way to see it. Now, there is one cost which is called sunk cost. I won't give here a definition. I leave it to you to research for this, and I'm waiting for answer for good examples of sunk costs. Yeah, looking at that project and into the control account, it doesn't sound bad. It's even really good how this project behind me is going. I'm quite happy. So you've seen that those accounts, they exist. You've seen how we plan the cost management into a project. Now the next thing for you is to dig into estimations. And for this, I have videos that are ready for you and waiting for you. After that, we'll jump together also into how to determine the budget. And once we've done the budget, of course, we'll admit that it has been approved. The proof, it's built behind us. So we'll need to control the cost of that project. And for that, we are going to use the S curves to follow how it's going on, and we are going to look at the variances that we'll have, and we'll use the earned value method. So you liked it? So thumb up, subscribe to the channel if it's not already done. This at least helps us a lot. Share it with your friend. Do not hesitate to comment, ask questions. Until then, till I meet you again, have a good time. Bye bye.